Today we're going to talk about unit vectors in the Cartesian system. We're going to start out with the 2D system, and then next we will go to the 3D system. So you'll see down here at the bottom left I have a simple 2D Cartesian system. I don't have it labeled yet, we'll do that in just a second. And you'll notice up here that I've got an I and a J. So let's go ahead and draw on this figure what I and J are. First, let's label our coordinate system. So as is typical, we're going to have X here, and then we will have a Y here. So those just denote our X and Y axes, and we will use those to reference the different directions. Now I and J, those are going to be our notation to indicate which direction or which axis we're talking about. So the I unit vector is going to represent the X axis, or the X direction. So we can just simply draw in here I hat, and sometimes it is said I hat. The little circumflex on top just indicates that it is a unit vector instead of a regular vector. And then now let's do the same for J. So J would just represent the Y direction. So it's going to basically be parallel to the Y axis. And that would be J, or J hat. Now you'll see both of these are positive. We're along the positive X axis and the positive Y axis. We could also do the same for the negative directions. So going to the left would be the negative X direction. So in using the unit vector, we would write negative I. And then for the negative Y direction, we would be going downward. So here we would just say negative J. Alright, so in doing that, if you had a person standing in the center of this coordinate system and you wanted them to go to the right 3 meters, you would say go 3I, and that would tell them that they need to go in the I direction, or in the positive X direction. So the unit vectors basically just denote which direction we are talking about. And the signs, like we have the negative sign here, and this is a positive sign right here, those indicate if we're going in the positive or the negative direction. Now this has just been the 2D system. If we're working in the 3D system, we also have another axis to consider, and that would be the Z axis. So let's switch over to that. And here is our 3D system. So we're still going to have the X and the Y axis. You'll notice that these are located in a different place this time because we are in the 3D system. I'm saying this positive X is coming out of the board or out of the screen. So the unit vector here would be a positive I. And then I've got Y going to the right. That would be a positive Y. So our unit vector for that would be a positive J. And now you'll see we have the Z-axis. So Z-axis represents the vertical direction, and our unit vector for that is going to be K. So I, J, and K are the standard unit vectors for the Cartesian system. So we're going to write a unit vector K that corresponds to the Z direction. And just like we did before, we can do the same thing for the negative directions. So if we draw our negative axes on here, let's start with X. X in the negative direction would be going back into the board. So we'll have negative X. And our unit vector for that direction would be negative I. And then a negative Y would be going to the left. And then our unit vector here would be negative J. And then finally we've got a negative Z. And our unit vector here would be negative K. So in the next lesson we'll go over how to put these unit vectors together and create force vectors, position vectors, and we'll put it all together and do some examples. Alright, see you then.